Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is John Harkins. I'm the Events Associate for the French American Chamber of Commerce, New York chapter, and we're happy to welcome you to our discussion today on the future of beauty. Now, before I hand it off to our moderator, Wendy Gerber, we unfortunately will not be joined by Guy Balouche of L'Oréal due to an unforeseen conflict. But with that being said, I won't take up any more time away from our great panelists. So, Wendy, I will hand it off to you and we can get started. Wendy?
Thank you very much, John, and thank you to the French American Chamber of Commerce for hosting this discussion on the future of beauty. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Bienvenue to our discussion. As the world grapples with the coronavirus pandemic, businesses across industry sectors have been severely impacted, and the beauty business has been particularly hard hit. Just after the Financial Times had declared in 2019 that the beauty industry was on the cusp of a boom. Our lives have changed in significant ways, our priorities have shifted, and consumer behavior has changed as well. Today we'll be discussing what the future of beauty looks like through the pandemic into 2021 and beyond, with a focus on technology and digitalization. We have two terrific panelists joining us today with different perspectives on this important topic. Olivier Zimmer, co-founder of Spate, which is a machine intelligence solution that analyzes over 10 billion consumer behavior signals from across the web to identify new white space opportunities for brands. And Raheel Khan, Vice President of Corporate Strategy and Innovation at the Estee Lauder Companies, will share with us the brand perspective, how the Estee Lauder companies are driving technological innovation to meet these new customer trends during the pandemic and beyond. Olivier and Raheel will discuss important changes within the industry during this time of profound consumer disruption. They'll share their insights into which changes are here to stay and ultimately what they believe the future of beauty. And now a bit more on our esteemed panelists. Raheel Khan is Vice President of Corporate Category and Innovation Strategy at the Estee Lauder Companies. As the leader of global category and innovation strategy, he acts as a strategic advisor, supporting brands and the executive leadership team to drive subcategory share gains through deploying in-house strategic insights, analytics, and trends, and driving coordination across Estee Lauder's portfolio of brands. His team consists of strategists, consumer insight experts, and data scientists who help the Estee Lauder companies focus creativity through data and analytics through real-time decision-making that drives their impact and revenue growth. And Olivier Zimmer is co-founder of Spate, a machine intelligence solution for finding the next big trend in beauty and consumer goods. As I said, Spate analyzes over 10 billion consumer behavior signals, identifying new white space opportunities for brands. They leverage data science to predict the next big consumer trend in food, fashion, and beauty. Previously, Olivier spent 10 years at Google, surely giving him a tremendous background, where he and his Spate co-founder started Google's trend spotting division while leading the data science team. Olivier spotted trends such as face masks, turmeric, and cold brew before it was a thing. So we're excited to hear what new trends he's going to share with us today. And I'm Wendy Gerber, CEO of the International Consulting Group, a global strategy and marketing consulting firm driving growth with a triple bottom line approach. I work with CEOs and senior business leaders across industry sectors, including fashion and beauty, to spearhead innovation, business growth in the United States and globally, branding, ESG, and marketing strategies. I've worked with companies ranging from Ralph Lauren to Kenneth Cole to Steve Madden, as well as their licensees and portfolio brands, ranging from fashion to beauty to finance. And I've worked with startups, financial institutions, private equity firms, and advising other consultancies. So at a time when we're spending more hours at home than ever, the relationship between at-home beauty and technology has never been more closely linked. The coronavirus pandemic forced many companies to reevaluate their business models to adapt to the needs of the new consumer. Our panelists will speak for about 30 to 35 minutes, and then we'll take questions from the audience for 10 to 15 minutes. So please remember to type your questions into the Q&A section, and we'll get to as many as we can. So first, let's take a look at trends and the business shift. While the beauty industry may be in a relatively stronger position than other consumer categories, 2020 will be one of the worst years it's ever endured. According to McKinsey & Company, the global beauty industry has been shocked by the COVID-19 crisis. First quarter sales were weak, and there have been widespread store closures, as we all know only too well. COVID-19 thus had a huge impact on in-store shopping, and it seems to be continuing to do so, at least for the foreseeable future. In most major beauty industry markets, in-store shopping accounted for up to 85% of beauty products prior to the COVID-19 crisis. And even online savvy American millennials and Gen Zers reportedly made close to 60% of their purchases in stores. So with the close of premium beauty product outlets due to COVID-19, approximately 30% of the beauty industry market was shut down. So clearly this has impacted both consumer behavior as well as tech innovation in the beauty sector. Olivier, let's start with you. Can you share with us what you're seeing in terms of shifts in consumer behavior?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Wendy, for the introduction. So talking about consumer behavior, I just want to give a few words on like what we do at Spate and what is the type of like data that we track. So we look at consumer behavior from the lenses of like Google search. As Wendy was mentioning, I spent 10 years working there. What we do at Spate is that we reverse engineered the Google database. And so we are able to collect and see all the signals of like what consumers are typing into the Google search queries. Why is it interesting? We like to say that every time a consumer is typing something into the Google search engine, he or she is like sharing a secret. You dare asking Google all the questions that you don't dare asking your mom, your spouse, your best friends, and so on and so on. And so by consequence, by looking at those questions, those search queries, we believe at Spate that we can have this very like raw, unfiltered, and unbiased perspective of like what's the true consumer behavior. We bring this data as a complementary perspective, you know, to maybe your more traditional survey and focus groups that we know sometimes have the biases, you know, and then at the same time, complementary also like to sales data, as if we can track consumer demand before the sales happen, it is essentially a preemptive signal that can inform you of what's going to happen in the future. So now framing better what we mean by consumer behavior. I think, of course, when we look at Google searches for the whole overall beauty category during COVID, it dipped, right? So COVID arrived in the US, the inception point is around like mid-February. By mid-March, we saw a major dip. We reached like the bottom line. Here is minus 35% in terms of like search interest for beauty in general. But then what is super interesting is to see that from that bottom line point, things actually recovered pretty quickly, and we reach the same level of searches in like hair and skincare by mid-April 2020. And I think we all discovered that actually there were some categories in hair, for example, that were considered as essential goods. As consumers were rushing for toilet paper, for example, and pasta and all the non-perishable foods in March, by the time we hit April, consumers were rushing for hair colors and hair dyes. The CEO of Walmart actually said mid-April that hair color was actually like the new toilet paper. So very interesting. That is, of course, due to the fact that hair salons and major services were closed, and we see the same effect happening like throughout the skincare category. However, and that's not a surprise for people working in a beauty space, makeup has not been doing well. Makeup suffered actually already from a decline pre-COVID, and actually COVID didn't really like help this category to recover. We do see makeup coming back a little bit. We'll be talking more about this, but it's the category I would say that lost the most during the pandemic time. What is of course super interesting, and we'll be talking more about this, is that yes, overall the industry has been slowing down, but within that, when we peel the onion, we can see that there are some winners and there are also some losers. And I think that data will help you understanding what are the main drivers of change that are happening in the beauty industry.
Okay, terrific. So now we know that instead of Big Brother watching us, we've got Google and Spate watching us.
We're not watching you. We are collecting some anonymous and public data we are not tracking any information regarding like individual consumer, and it's actually public data that you can find also, for example, like Google Trends.
No, it's great. I was only kidding about that, but it's really fascinating that you're able to glean all this information that is so helpful in defining trends and consumer insights through what you do. And Raheel, we'd love to hear your perspective, the corporate brand perspective on trends and how it's influencing your business.
Yeah, absolutely, Wendy, and thank you for having me, and good to be here. So absolutely, actually just kind of continuing Olivier's point, right, about how important data is. Maybe let me give some context around what I do, and then I'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing. So as you were introducing, right, so we support our company to make choices to gain market share. And the way we do that is by leveraging AI to mine millions of daily conversations across pre-purchase, purchase, post-purchase, right? So Olivier just talked about Google search, which is very much probably around purchase. Pre-purchase is social platforms, right? And then post-purchase is reviews that consumers leave on retail websites or brand websites. And so we capture all of that, including working with Olivier very closely. And we essentially connect the dots and try to contextualize and organize what consumers are talking through this kind of journey, right? This kind of purchase journey. And so what we're learning kind of from this proprietary platform that we've built is that for sure, COVID has been an accelerator of existing trends. Olivier just mentioned that, right? There's existing trends happening, COVID just pushed them faster. We did see at a high level resilience of skincare and hair care. And I would say, Olivier, I think you're right, which is makeup, from an overall standpoint is down, but there's also been an evolution of makeup and fragrance. And particularly the three trends that are driving these categories, one is we're seeing kind of like this idea of healthification of skincare. Maybe that's what I've been calling it, but that's how I've understood it, that essentially skincare is getting healthier and makeup is getting more skinified, if that makes sense, right? So the skinification of makeup, and then there's healthification of skincare, where consumers are shifting towards noticeable benefits, which are about, which are rooted in science. They're signs of acceleration of sustainability and clean beauty, and the conscious consumer is on the rise, right? That's kind of like the whole healthification kind of trend. Second thing that we're seeing, which Olivier also mentioned, is that we're seeing skincare and hair care as self-care. I mean, I know, Olivier, you just mentioned that they're becoming essentials. Another way to think about it is that, these two categories allow consumers to escape, right? To have sort of like, through rituals and routines to almost escape with this like pandemic so that the walls don't cave in, right? If you don't kind of take care of yourself, it's almost like, it's difficult to sort of like, be, be excited and keep going. And so perhaps the way I've thought about this is that these categories allow for escapism through self-care. And then the third big category, which I think we're going to talk about anyway in a little bit more detail later on, is sustainability, right? Consumers are going towards the greater good. And the crisis has actually reminded us how interconnected we are, right? And there's a tie between the environment, the well-being of our society, and our choices of what we do in terms of products. So anyway, eco-consciousness, sustainability topics, like recycling, biodegradability. It's interesting, when the pandemic hit, at least Olivia, this is what we saw when the pandemic hit. Immediately, we saw conversations on these platforms which were about like sanitization and anxiety and fear. But after a few weeks, things started becoming normalized, and then we started seeing again like this acceleration of existing trends like eco-consciousness, recycling, and all the things that I just talked about. And so anyway, that's kind of what we've seen, Wendy, which I'm sure we'll go into a little bit more detail later on.
That's terrific. Thank you both for your insights. So really the analytics and technology enable you to create stronger connections with your consumers, providing them with what they're looking for, what they need, and even providing them in terms of self-care with kind of an opportunity to pamper themselves at a difficult time when we control so little about what's going on in the pandemic, but a way to really create a better life for us as we're quarantining at home. So Raheel, the Estee Lauder companies believes that technology touches virtually every part of the prestige beauty experience. And your website notes that technologists deliver breakthrough solutions that provide consumers with seamless, innovative, and aspirational experiences across mobile, online, and in-store. Now that we're not in store or in salons as much due to COVID-19, how has the pandemic and these new consumer trends impacted your work in technology innovation? You've shared with me that growth will come from granularity. Can you speak a bit about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a lot of sort of great points in there that you make, right? Let me kind of pick up on your last point about the granularity and how that links with technology, right? So for sure, technology, I mean, it's such a broad topic, right? Because technology is about obviously, augmented reality, virtual try-ons, kind of like a dispensing, which is touchless, which maybe I'll talk about in a little bit. But let me go back to kind of start off with how do we think about granularity of using technology to understand in a granular way what are the insights, right, that consumers are looking for. And so earlier we were talking about makeup, and I mentioned how makeup is actually evolving. And so what that means is what we're seeing is that when you go into the details of specific consumer segments based on age, ethnicity, kind of, their psychographics and their behaviors, what we start to see is that even makeup, there's pockets where there's certain acceleration going on, right? So consumers, for example, are looking for, instead of like heavy foundation, they're looking for now almost found, this new category of complexion, which is not the old tinted moisturizers, but actually a true hybridization of skincare and makeup. And as an example in makeup, in the makeup side, right? And then on the other side, in skincare, one of those granular opportunities that we're seeing is that there's been an increase in demand for treatment lotions or watery lotions, which is a subcategory in skincare, and it's soaring as the hydration step between cleansers and serums, right? That's the new kind of regimen, that new step that consumers are almost looking for. And again, I think it's in this area of kind of self-care and higher performance skincare, where this treatment lotion allows consumers to get better results from their overall skincare regimen. And so, and as an example, we have a couple of amazing products from within our portfolio of brands. Estee Lauder's Micro Essence is one example, and La Mer's treatment lotion is another example, which deliver to these granular consumers or consumer needs, which are specific to the form, the benefit, and the the concern that these consumers have. And just one quick thing, earlier I talked about technology and data that allows us to understand these granular insights and almost like gain market share in these insights. But the other key piece is that what we do is we leverage creativity along with data, and almost as a way to catalyze one and catalyzing the other, right? creativity and data are equal partners. We look at, these data points, which basically tell us where is there emergence of growth, where is there emergence of kind of unmet needs, and then our amazing creative geniuses within our company look at that data. It focuses their creativity on how can they solve it, and hence comes the solution of creating this new category of treatment lotion, which is a new step within skincare, or this new category within makeup of true skincare based complexion products that give you what you're looking for in terms of the the coverage and the blurring of your uneven skin tone, etc., but doing it with a skincare as the base of it.
And I love what you wrote. It was very poetic that creativity and data are equal partners where one catalyzes the other, unlocking magic, which is consumer love, as well as building the business through purchases and repurchasing. It's a beautiful concept and a very, very nice way of saying how data and consumers' needs and wants and creativity tie together to really create a beautiful, virtuous cycle. Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about e-commerce, because now that stores are closed, e-commerce is really the most viable model for consumers purchasing goods. And as you've both noted, the crisis is accelerating trends that were already shaping the market. We already saw e-commerce and its increasing use, but at the same time, increased online sales are not offsetting the decline in in-store sales. Some beauty products and brands are reporting e-commerce sales that are twice as high as their pre-COVID-19 levels. For example, Sephora's US online sales are reportedly up 30% versus last year. And in China, McKinsey research has seen online revenues for beauty industry players rise 20 to 30% during the pandemic. Olivier, what are customers telling Spate that they're looking for in terms of e-commerce?
That's an excellent question, Wendy. So we looked at all the searches that were made around like retailers in the US, just to understand a little like better, like what consumers were looking for regarding the space of like beauty. And it turns out like in everything, during COVID, there are definitely like some winners and less winners in like how those different like stores reacted. I think winner number one is essentially like all the groceries and the drugstores. Because they were considered an essential business, they managed to stay like open during the pandemic. And I think that was definitely a very strong positive point for them. Consumers were looking online and also went to these locations to purchase their essential goods, such as like hair colors, for example. So that's like one thing. Talking about Sephora and Ulta, it's actually like super interesting. It did not react exactly the same way to COVID. I think Ulta was definitely like much more reactive and implemented like many initiatives such as like curbside pickup super quickly. The geographical location tends to be also like less into like concentrated urban areas. And it turns out Ulta did better, or did like much better than Sephora from the search like standpoint. Sephora did catch up, but we can see that Ulta there did a good job. And then lastly, I think it's the most surprising findings we got. We thought Amazon would be killing it. Amazon has been like literally eating market share in every single industry that we are tracking. So we were expecting like this is the glorious time for Amazon. It's time for them to take over everything in the beauty space. Turns out they didn't see that of a big increase. And I think that mainly it's because they had some delays in like the shipping. If you remember well, in like March, April, and so on, there were definitely like some delays that were happening in like shipping there, which in turns I think was one of the cause that explained like why they did not necessarily like took over like the whole like beauty field here. So I think the conclusion is that not necessarily like all channels of distributions here are equal, and then some of them were able to be super creative, super reactive in the moment, which in turns, and yeah, some of them more surprising than others, which in turns like benefited also when it comes to like where consumers were looking to buy things.
Okay, thank you. That's fascinating. And Raheel, you've talked about how digitalization and tech have enabled a new consumer journey. Given the pandemic where we're social distancing, there's an increased need for people to feel connected. Can you share with us your thoughts about how technology is helping you to engage consumers at this time?
Yeah, absolutely, Wendy. So I think, first of all, I think just from an e-commerce standpoint, right, our online business actually surged worldwide in fiscal 20 or in 2020. We actually delivered nearly triple-digit organic sales growth in the fourth quarter, which for us, the fourth quarter of our fiscal is, the quarter just passed, which is the height of the pandemic, which makes sense. And actually, so, and actually that growth was across brand.com, but not just brand.com, but also brand boutiques that we have on other platforms, whether it be Tmall or retailer.com, which is the equivalent of, obviously the luxury Amazon kind of a play. So in terms of your question about how do we leverage technology to engage consumers, I think what we're seeing within post-pandemic is that the consumer desire for connecting with communities and their willing or need for discovery continues. It's just moved online, right? And so for sure, right, there's technologies like virtual try-on, contactless shopping for retail. There's also, kind of some test and learns that we're doing on gesture control surfaces, which are all enablers and technology enablers for how we get consumers to engage. But I think for me, there's the softer part in all of this as well, right? Which is, with the technologies, what is it that you need to achieve? And there's kind of, 4 key drivers in my mind that are super important. One is we need to ensure that we actually are addressing a relevant consumer purpose, right? It actually, what matters is the consumer purpose, not maybe the brand purpose, right? Like anything else really. The consumer purpose is first and foremost what matters, and brands such as ours are adapting to deliver to that purpose. Number 2, what we're seeing is that there's a strong community activation going on, right? Like we've heard a lot about earned media and how important it is, and this kind of community activation piece has been a key driver from what I've seen and experienced. And how do you get those 2 things? So that's the other 2 things that I wanted to mention, which is that what we're seeing is that hero products have been more important than ever, right? And hero products are, in some instances, have more awareness than the brand itself. Hero products that are reinventing categories or reinventing how consumers think about certain categories to deliver to their concerns are the ones that are really important and that matter in kind of this consumer engagement model. And then finally, the 4th thing is that having a story-first mindset, which is disruptive, but which is executed through product, is also what we're seeing as being important. So look, I think in my mind, kind of like in this question that you had about how technology, engaging consumers, if I would maybe summarize it, I would say it's the digital community-driven brand building that matters now. And obviously linked to that, you have all sorts of kind of tactics that perhaps we can go into later or we can go into now, which are around things like virtual try-ons and the things that I was mentioning earlier.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd actually love for you to talk a little bit about that now, virtual try-ons and some of the other real high-tech innovations.
Sure, yeah, happy to. So I think the key piece there is that there's a few things, right? So there's what we've done over the last few months is quickly evolve our live chat capability and added video to that, for example, right? We've expanded virtual try-on to include more categories. We always had virtual try-on, and we always had it in certain markets. China was the one that actually led it because they were also ahead in terms of their kind of online consumer journey. And actually, they were ahead because, by the way, it's because of the SARS pandemic that happened there, which was more profound there. But anyway, expanding virtual try-on to not just be on makeup, but to be in multiple categories has been a key kind of key action that we've pursued. We've also rapidly deployed live streaming, which has been another area, another tactic that's very important. It's for us, it's been mostly starting from mainland China and then going global, where we're engaging makeup artists as well as brand ambassadors for tutorials. Where, as you know, in prestige beauty, education is a key tenet of how we engage our consumers. But our live streams are not just for education; they're also shoppable, right? So where consumers can make purchases within that kind of live streaming event that's happening. And so what we've seen as a result of all of this is that traffic has grown, and I mentioned this stat earlier, right? Traffic has grown significantly, and conversion rates are also actually dramatically rising. What we always focus on as a company, and really what I focus on with the work that my team does, is how do we drive repeat kind of purchase behaviors? And what we're seeing is that these tactics are actually driving that repeat purchase. And just to give one quick example from one of our brands, Clinique, right, which is a great brand that we have, is so relevant in today's world. Clinique's live streaming series designed to both entertain and to educate, right? And this led to consumers to return more frequently to this kind of like to our brand, brand.com, spending 4 times longer on the site and converting at much higher levels. We also had a great brand ambassador in Amelia Clark, which enabled that live streaming. I don't know for those in the audience who were in the June live streaming event where we had Amelia, and it was just fantastic, kind of being part of this whole experience that she was able to create with the technology as the enablement.
Thank you. That's fascinating. And in many ways, that is the silver lining to COVID-19, is that it's forced all of us professionally as brands and also as individuals to really pivot and think about how we can create connections and new opportunities given the change in our lifestyles. And what you were talking about regarding at-home beauty and streaming, live streams, et cetera, ties in very well to what I wanted to next ask Olivier, which is, what are you seeing as the major consumer behavior shifts that are taking place? And I think we wanted to try to limit this part of the program to 35 minutes, so I think we'll end with Olivier's comments and then take a look at what our audience is interested in hearing about. There's so much more we could talk about.
Perfect. I will try to keep it short then. I think like what is interesting with data, at least, is that COVID had an impact, right, on the industry. And I think the whole question is, what are the trends that will last post-COVID, and what are the ones that were just like specific to the moment of COVID, right? And so to give you a very concrete example, we saw a massive spike happening, for example, around hand sanitizer, when consumers were like freaking out, and it was all about DIY hand sanitizers, and people were looking online to buy like specific ingredients and doing it by themselves, and we already like now in September, October, we see that this already like disappeared, So yes, like hand sanitizer is like up, but it's not necessarily like as big as it used to be. However, on the other hand, we see trends that are more sustained, that came during COVID that were accelerated and potentially will keep growing, And I think that's what we are seeing. I will just come back to what Raheel was like talking about, like at-home beauty. That's something we definitely like see, as services were like shutting down, like hair salons, spas, and so on and so on. We do see a surge in consumer interest around everything that they can do at home. This has a huge impact when it comes to beauty, also around like devices and accessories, I would say. So in hair, we have hair clippers, hair scissors, like hair scrunchies, all of these, In skincare, it's about like gua sha facial steamers, facial wand, your rose, your jade rollers, all of these items are still like really hot right now. In wellness, it's all about like candles. So candles is like really big, diffusers, incense, and so on, Like Search for Home Depot, for example, went also up. We know that consumers spend way more money to improve their home, and we can see this coming up in the space of like wellness, you know. And then next to it is this idea in parallel of like self-care. Consumers have more time on their hand. They want to take care of themselves. And so here, a trend such as the face mask, and I'm talking here about the beauty face mask that actually was big in 2017, was declining and then picked up again during like COVID, is actually very interesting, right? So we see like matcha face mask, turmeric face mask, and then all its variation. So we saw like hair mask, foot mask, and actually everything around feet is doing really well. I think that as people were not wearing shoes, searches for shoes were actually on the decline during like COVID. Our hypothesis is that they could take care of their feet, you know. And so, yeah, like we believe that these are trends that will last and will keep actually we keep growing like on the post-COVID perspective. And then like lastly, just want to mention a quick point. It's not because services and treatments have been like shut down that consumers are not craving for these services. And so we saw a very interesting data point. As soon as things were reopening in the US in like around June, we could see a massive spike in searches for getting a haircut, getting your facial treatment back, you know, or even getting your Botox refresh, I guess, you know. And everything around like nose jobs was also like really massive, you know. And so, yeah, for one trend that is happening, there is always like the counter trend that goes together with it.
Okay, well, that's great. So thank you so much, Raheel and Olivier, for those incredible insights into the future of beauty. And now we'll take questions from our audience. So if you haven't yet shared your questions, please type them into the Q&A tab so we can get the benefit of Raheel and Olivier's comments on them. And John, will you be sharing your screen so I can see the chat with questions, because I'm not seeing it now.
I've sent the chat to you, but if you don't see them, let me know.
Yeah, I don't see it. So
okay. I can ask the questions then. So I think to both of you, do you think the COVID-19 crisis and beyond has sped up the counterfeiting and the custom-made cosmetics? To either, that's not directed to any.
Olivia, do you have any data on that, on what you've seen?
That's a good question, actually. So did COVID-19 speed up? Is that correct? Did I hear correctly? Did it accelerate the trend on counterfeit?
Has it accelerated? Yes.
Counterfeit and what, sorry?
Counterfeited and custom-made cosmetics.
So counterfeited, I don't know, to be very honest. I don't have like any data there. Custom-made, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that, yeah, the DIY movement was like a big thing. People were experimenting in like doing their own hand sanitizer. That's one example. But I can, like, face mask was huge. Banana face mask was huge. Watermelon, I don't know why, suddenly picked up during like COVID as an ingredient, you know. We can see that a lot of people were searching on YouTube, were searching like how-to videos. We can see also like the whole, like, yeah, I think specifically watermelon, like sleeping mask, you know. So consumers were definitely like experimenting, trying new things on. And again, because, you know, they had more time on their hands, they were like baking potentially like some face mask.
Yeah, and I think just to add just some thoughts, right? I think the question is about counterfeiting, which is separate to, I think, customization. I'm assuming that's the question. So in terms of counterfeiting, look, I think, again, I don't have the data, so I don't want to speak to it. But I think from what I've seen, consumers around the world, they figure out a way to get the product that they're looking for, right? So, and I say that is because travel retail has been an extremely important part of our company. You know, travel retail is where when consumers are traveling and, you know, they're buying at the airports, and particularly what we would see is that consumers that are from the East do a lot of their purchases on, you know, during their travels to Europe or to the US, etc. What we're seeing though, however, is that those consumers in domestic China and across, you know, Asia, they're still, you know, figuring out a way to get their product even though they're not traveling. And those products are not obviously Counterfeit. They're from our, they're from our company. And so, obviously Counterfeit is a problem in the luxury space. It's a very important and very, big financial problem. But I haven't seen anything, at least that I've been exposed to, where Counterfeit has increased as a result of pandemic. Perhaps it has, but it hasn't been enough where, the noise has been enough where it's at least reached me, not that I work in this area. The second thing about customization is that I think for me, customization is another one of those areas, which is how you can use technology to get to, the consumer of one, right? And now we're getting to a point where the technology will allow us to get there. We have this vast amounts of data, we have amazing amounts of machine learning capabilities. And so, we actually have many examples within our company where, for example, Estee Lauder brand introduced a breakthrough new, serum under the Advanced Night Repair franchise. And that serum was very much created with textures, benefits for different consumer segments, but very granular, small segments, right? Testing that product on women of all ages, skin tones, ethnicities. And so I think this specific understanding of almost that consumer of one, we're getting closer and closer to that so that we can deliver to her specific need when she wants it and how she wants it.
Sure. I think just for the sake of time, we're going to do one more question for each of you. Olivier, one of the questions we have specifically for you, do you see us ever going back to lipstick, or will we soon see the end of lipstick?
My favorite question. I'm so glad. I don't know who asked this, but thank you so much. Because of course, like with any recession or crisis, there is the famous lipstick index, right? Where apparently sales of lipsticks are supposed to surge when you are in recession because it's a cheap item. And so the big question we always get is that do we see the lipstick index? Is it picking up right now? Unfortunately, yeah, lipstick is right now on the decline. I think we are at -15% year over year. And so right now, at least, we do not see lipstick picking up. I think there are many rationales behind it. I'm not the one coming up with this. It's actually what the industry is talking about. Like wearing a face mask obviously doesn't help in the sales of lipstick. Spending our times on webinars and Zoom calls doesn't help neither. However, that being said, there is a silver lining. It doesn't mean that everything lips is necessarily on the decline. What we see in the data, at least, is that lip gloss is on the rise. And so it seems that this whole more plumping effect, the lip glossy effect that is driven by influencers is definitely something where there is growth, in the field of makeup. And in general, in makeup, there is also some growth happening. Everybody's talking about the eye category, of course. And so maybe we'll not be talking about the lipstick effect, but we'll be talking about the eyeshadow effect, in the coming.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And innovation has a lot to do with it as well, right? I mean, if you look at the history of lip, there's a lot of kind of breakthrough that came right before the pandemic, which was around liquid lips and long-wearing liquid lips. So there's also a consumer fatigue factor. There's a mask factor. There's the skinification that is happening. So there's multiple drivers of what's happening to lip.
Mm-hmm. And Raheel, I think we'll finish here with you. They're curious what companies rather are you taking inspiration from or seeing as examples when it comes to innovation, digital transformation outside of the prestige beauty world?
It's a great question, actually. So I think that's exactly the right approach that we're taking, because we don't have all the answers. And for me, the work that we're doing on my team is framing what does the world of beauty look like 10 years from now, right? So if I was to take a time machine and move it, and sit in it and go there, can I describe backwards, this kind of consumer journey, which is going to be digital, right? Which is going to, which is multi-channel, right? Omni-channel, but with digital, first. And so what we're doing is, first of all, we're framing out, what is the consumer journey, right? And so obviously it goes from awareness, consideration, to trial, to purchase, to repeat, to loyalty, to advocacy, and then being part of the community that I was talking about. And so for me, what I'm trying to do is, for each of these steps in the journey, look at who's the best, what has been the best industry, and within that industry, what has been the best company. For example, right, obviously when it comes to trial, Warby Parker has done a great job, right? They give a kit, you get these glasses, you put them on, and so the tension of trial has been solved. As an example, I think when I look at some of the other areas like the wine industry and the alcohol industry, they've done some very good, interesting things around awareness as well, right? Because they, particularly when we think about the fragrance category, you kind of want to try to solve them. So that's the industry that we look at. So the short answer is that it's actually the industry that we look at that has kind of been the best at delivering that. Thing one. Within that, the company that has kind of disrupted that area, and then almost taking the mindset of if we were that company, how would we apply that in beauty? And just so I guess that's how I would answer that.
Sure. Sorry, Wendy, I just want to thank all the attendees who sent in the questions. I apologize that we didn't get to answer all of them. But Wendy, I'll let you have the final word and then we'll sign off.
All right, thank you. That was a great question and a terrific answer by Raheel to really wrap this up, because what will the world look like 10 years from now? It is important to look beyond the prestige beauty sector and benchmark what other corporations are doing, just as in the world at large, business, government are collaborating to try to get us through this pandemic. So benchmarking is a critical thing to really innovate and forge forward into a brighter future. And so while this pandemic has taken an immeasurable toll on the world, we can only hope that the future of beauty will be brighter as a result of all that we've learned. Salons will be safer, beauty will be more accessible, content will be more relatable and educational, as with the live streams that Raheel mentioned, and we'll all be more connected, albeit virtually for the moment, than we've ever been. So the best minds in the business, including Raheel and Olivier, are working hard to ensure that the new normal is better than what we left behind by providing the insights and ideas to create a better beauty experience online, by continuing to innovate and to understand consumers' needs and to create connections. So thank you, merci Raheel and Olivier, for joining us today to share your insights and ideas to ensure that our feeling of connection remains as relevant now during the pandemic as ever. And thank you everyone for joining the French American Chamber of Commerce for this talk on the future of beauty. We hope you'll join us for the One Forum coming up on November 17th, which the French American Chamber of Commerce has planned and which is sure to be terrific. Stay well and stay safe, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Everyone.